Hello and welcome to Face Off here on France 24. This Tuesday, France's parliament is beginning to debate a crucial bill aimed at boosting employment by making labor laws more flexible. It is crucial for jobs, of course, but it is also crucial for the ruling socialists, who have faced stiff opposition within their own ranks and on the streets, forcing them to water down the bill. And there's no guarantee that this bill will survive in what is likely to be a bruising parliamentary grilling. The government is hoping that it will become law by the end of July. It is also, of course, a major gamble for François Hollande, as we're merely 1 year away from the presidential election. To discuss this bill and its implication, Philippe Turl from Radio France Internationale and Jean-Marc Gonin with the Figaro magazine. So nearly 2 months ago, the so-called El Khomri bill, named after the Labour Minister Myriam El Khomri, was presented by the government, somewhat awkwardly, admitted the Prime Minister, and since then it has been a bone of contention in the Socialist Party, but also on the streets of France.
France's May Day this year was a rallying point against a heavily contested labour law, which protesters say will water down their rights and increase job insecurity. The so-called El Khomri law will be debated by the National Assembly Tuesday. The ruling socialists, backed by the radical left, should in theory have a majority to carry it against diverse opponents such as the Les Républicains Party, the centrist UDI, the Greens and various left-wing groups. But there are up to 40 government MPs who are threatening to vote no, which could impede its passing. Some left-wing socialists say they won't vote for it unless there are major amendments.
I think the choices that have been made, especially on the 5 points we call the black spots, are not the right ones, particularly where it doesn't hold multinationals and their French affiliates liable for laying off French workers, even when they're doing well internationally. That is unacceptable. And not paying workers proper overtime is also unacceptable.
There have already been numerous amendments made at the request of trade unions. Prime Minister Manuel Valls has done away with plans to cap labour court indemnities. The minister responsible for the bill says it must go through.
The time has come for this law to be debated. Giving up on this law would be... withdrawing the law would be a surrender, and that's not what we want to do.
The government has been sending SMSs out to its cohorts, saying every MP must be mobilised. The debate is expected to be a long one, with over 5,000 amendments to the bill having been tabled.
A long debate probably in the National Assembly starting this Tuesday, and then it goes to the Senate and probably will go back and forth. The President, François Hollande, this Tuesday said it was, I quote him, a progressive bill, a fair compromise. That's what he thinks, that's what he wishes. Will the Parliament listen to him?
The start seems to be quite difficult for him. 2 weeks have been put on the agenda to discuss this bill. 5,000 amendments have already been called and will be discussed. So it's going to be
long days and long nights.
Long nights, a parliamentary marathon. At stake is really that is the left of the socialists don't want to reduce protection in the working contracts, and that labor reform will be very difficult to pass with the kind of opposition that is growing now. It's getting, this bill, it's no longer something pragmatic. It's really a symbol that is being debated. A lot of those MPs say we were not elected to reduce rights in this country in that labor reform, and we'll never vote it. So at least 40 MPs are said to be against it and wouldn't vote it in the...
Socialist MPs.
Socialist MPs won't vote the bill as it is now at the beginning of the debate. They may have to water it down a lot more to get it passed. But then what will be left of this? I mean, it's a very crucial reform. It has come very late in François Hollande's mandate, and the employers' unions are asking for it desperately since years, and they are already unhappy with the changes that have occurred in the last weeks. So if it's watered down again and again, what will be left of the bill?
Right. I mean, the problem, it seems, started several weeks ago when this was presented. The Prime Minister, as I said, Manuel Valls, says, yes, we should have consulted more. This was badly presented. But this is obviously a core reform. I mean, the labor laws are very important in any country, but especially in France. And just 1 year before the end of the mandate, it seems that it came out of nowhere, and they're paying the price today with the opposition in Parliament and on the streets.
Well, if you go back in time a little bit, over the last 4 years of François Hollande's mandate, you will find him quite often saying, I'm only going to stand for re-election if I can bring down the unemployment rate. I will bring down the unemployment rate by the end of 2013, which of course he didn't. And unemployment has continued to rise. So this is being perceived by a large majority of people in France as a last-minute bid to try to do something to put François Hollande in an advantageous position to seek re-election next year, because he said that he's not going to seek re-election unless unemployment comes down. We've seen a little bit of a fall in unemployment this month, but it's been gradually rising since he took office in 2012. So it's been perceived as that. It's also been a communications nightmare on the part of the government, who announced this bill in a very haphazard way, with some changes being brought in before even the Labour Minister herself was told about them, and then she'd already announced things and other changes came along afterwards which she didn't know about. So it's been seen as being a disaster as far as communications is concerned. And it's become, I think, now with the state of unrest in France, with dissatisfaction about the ruling parties, general hatred, I think, of politicians on the part of not only the right but the left and the centre, this bill has become the personification of everything that people don't like about politics. It's become even bigger than just this bill. It's become an excuse to disobey, to hold reunions, to hold rallies for people to go on the rampage in Paris against this bill. And I think it's a much greater problem than just this bill. I think there's a general dissatisfaction with all the ruling classes in this country, and the fact that people don't think that they can actually do anything to change the situation.
Yes. Another problem in terms of the counting in Parliament is that the president was probably hoping that he could get some support from the center-right or even from the right. This seems very unlikely now. Let's take a listen to the former Conservative Prime Minister François Fillon, and also a reaction from the far-left leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon. They're both unhappy about this bill. Let's take a listen.
The first proposals were interesting and included advances. Much of that's now gone. And I think the debate will roll back the wording even more. A bill that was meant to create jobs, free up the French economy, will now end with text that creates additional constraints for entrepreneurs.
The smartness of a government is not about being tough and saying you're not allowed to say anything to anybody, and this is how it is, full stop. They've been saying this since the start, and they ended up taking out 20 pages of their text. There are still a few, but only the worst and most absurd ones.
Difficult to build a majority when you have the right and the left of the left against you, and a shrinking part of the Socialist Party.
Yes, at the very beginning, Hollande and his Prime Minister Valls certainly hoped that they would get some kind of support from the Conservative opposition.
At least abstention, something like this.
Abstentions, because the employers' union was part of the deal, discussed, had put through some of its proposals, but they have disappeared. And now I would say that, as Philip said, the discontent is so big against government that, I mean, the Conservatives won't give government a present in voting for this bill. Now they want to leave them in the quagmire and watch the show for the coming year. They hope that the government will fail.
It'd be quite interesting to see what's going to happen now, because there are like three possibilities within the government. You've got the backbench rebels who will always vote against, who voted against everything that François Hollande wanted to do since he became president. Then you've got another group in the middle, which sometimes votes in favour of the government and sometimes is against, but they're not rebels. And then you've got other MPs who would probably vote in favour of this bill, but now being blackmailed by their own constituents saying, we're against the bill. If you vote in favour of it, then we won't re-elect you next year when they have the legislative elections in France. So they're saying, oh dear, maybe we won't vote in favour of this bill because we're scared of losing our seat in next year's elections. So all of that looks a bit difficult for François Hollande right now. So what could be the final solution? The final solution will be probably that the government will have to force this bill through with a system called the 49-3 in France, which means they don't have to have a vote in Parliament to get the legislation through, because the government cannot back down on this. They already backed down on the nationality debate. They've also backed down on other bills in this country since Hollande took office. They have to get this through just to remain credible. So the whole situation is extremely complicated for Manuel Valls, the Prime Minister, for François Hollande, the President, and for the Socialist Party, those in favour of actually getting this bill through. And even if it does go through, it doesn't mean that the protests and the unrest is going to come to an end.
But getting to your point, Philip, what is interesting is that one of the leaders of the rebels gave an interview this morning in a newspaper saying that because as you said, when you use the 49.3 procedure, there's a vote.
It means there's no vote.
There's no vote, but there is a vote of confidence for our government. And being asked this, one of the so-called rebels, one of the leaders said, I don't know if we will vote the confidence. I mean, this is a rhetoric for the moment, but you never know where this can lead. I mean, that could be the last blow to this government.
Right. I mean, and the fact is, as you said, this has become a much larger issue, and there's not so much talk about what this could do to the job market in France. Many people are talking about a wasted opportunity yet again. Others are saying maybe this is an exaggeration very quickly.
Everybody who is from international organisations and many other European countries from outside and within the European Union and from Brussels say that France's labour market is too strict. It needs to be unblocked. It needs to be liberalised. It needs to be made more flexible. That will help the unemployment rate go down. And it just seems that everything that the French government tries to do, it becomes a fight and people say no. And that's the problem that the French have got, because they're scared unemployment is going to go up even more. And the government's saying if we don't change the labour market, it will go up. It's the only way to bring unemployment down.
Do you agree?
Not exactly. I don't think this bill will change the labour market immediately. It's more, as again, a symbol, a signal for the employers that is going to be more flexible. But in such a limited time, it's impossible to reverse the trends with just that sort of bill.
Okay, obviously we'll be following how this bill fares before Parliament in the coming weeks, probably. Lots of fireworks, late-night debates, and disputes. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Face Off. We'll see you next week here on France 24.